Rachel. I wanted to make kind of a special video for this month since it is National Infertility Month, and I wanted to make a video just kind of talking about my and my fiance's infertility journey. For those of you who don't know, and also for those of you who kind of came in the middle, that way, you know, things kind of have changed since the last update. My last update, I believe, was when we had been trying, we'd been trying 6 months officially, and we had been off contraceptive or, you know, stopped preventing for 6 months. So now we're a year later. We've been trying for an entire year, and a year and 6 months we haven't been preventing. So we definitely, you know, have had our share of struggles with infertility, and so that's just kind of why I wanted to share. So I'll start from the beginning. When I was 16 years old, I actually got pregnant with my ex-boyfriend. We were together 4 years, all through high school. So I got pregnant when I was 16 with him. We had been together 2 years, and it was a very hard time. And I actually ended up losing the baby about 12 weeks. They confirmed that it was a boy, and it was a very hard time. I wasn't necessarily ready for a baby, neither was he, and it definitely wasn't something that I wanted, but I had always dreamed of being a mother, and so the thought of it just excited me. I mean, I thought I might be ready. I was 16, I had a job, you know. I wasn't ready. But I definitely still look back on that experience and, you know, wonder, like, what if I wouldn't have lost the baby? What if, you know, I would have caught it sooner? Maybe I wouldn't have miscarried. And fast forwarding into my infertility journey, I found out why I did have the miscarriage. I never got a D&C. I never had to. The baby just passed naturally. I actually hadn't even gotten into the doctor beforehand. When I went to the doctor, that was when they confirmed that I had miscarried, and the baby was measuring about 12 weeks. They weren't really sure how far along I should have been, because my periods have always been very irregular. And so fast forwarding 2 years, me and him had broken up, and I actually had gotten with my fiance. So from then, I always kind of worried, you know, like, what if that affects future pregnancies? You know, what, like, I wonder what happened, like, why couldn't I carry the baby? And it always just kind of was in the back of my head, like, no, I don't want a baby right now, but, you know, I wonder if when I do, you know. And so when we had been together about over a year, we weren't quite engaged yet, but we had definitely talked about it, and we talked about timing and everything, and we started kind of talking about, you know, starting a family, and we're kind of thinking, you know, when would you want to? And both of us were kind of like, you know, I want a family, I want to be a young parent. You know, we're financially stable, we live together, you know, we obviously want a future together. You know, I really wouldn't mind if it was now. And at that point, I wasn't on birth control currently, but we were, you know, around that time of the month when I would be ovulating, we were, you know, using the pull-out method. And it was a couple of months after that talk that we actually decided to, you know, just stop the prevention. And just see what happened, not really time anything, but just see what happened. And we do have intercourse regularly, so it's something that I thought would happen pretty quick. And so about 6 months later, I kind of got to thinking like, oh, well, nothing's happening. My periods are super irregular. I think I probably had 3 periods in that time frame. And it was kind of worrying me, And so I decided that I was going to make an appointment with my OBGYN. It was about time for my annual. And so I was like, you know what? Let's go in, calm my nerves. I know everything's probably fine. So I get there, I tell them about how I've had irregular cycles, how I have very painful menstrual cramps when I'm on my period, and they found that I had polycystic ovaries. So at that point, I was a little discouraged. I was like, okay, so this is why. But when I was 16, I had gotten pregnant from the pull-out method. And so I kind of brought that up, and he told me, it can come from several factors. You're not necessarily born with it. Sometimes birth controls can cause it. And so at that point I was like, why did I ever get on birth controls? But, we just kind of went with it. He said that it shouldn't really affect my fertility. So he put me on medroxyprogesterone at that point. Just that way we weren't preventing anything, but we were helping with my periods to be regular and hopefully less painful. And it definitely worked. It worked very well. I was having very regular periods, but it wasn't helping me ovulate. And with PCOS, that's also something you come across. You may not, ovulate regularly. You may not ovulate at all. So I didn't think much of it again. But I was on that progesterone for, I don't know quite how long it was before we went and seeked help again. But after a while, I kind of started thinking like, I don't even think I'm ovulating. I started taking ovulation tests, and I was never getting clear results. And obviously on ovulation tests, you always get a faint line. But it was never darker than the control. So I kind of came like I'm not ovulating. So I went back, and he's like, well, they didn't have an ultrasound scheduled, and I was like, I want to see if my PCOS is worse, if it's better, if it's the same. I need more information. There's something wrong. I know something's wrong, and we're actually trying now. We're not just preventing. And so we went in, and keep in mind, I'm only 20 years old. I'll be 21 beginning of next month, November. And my fiance will be 24 in January. So we're still young. And I was very surprised they were actually helping. Oh, my battery's getting close to dying. I was very surprised that they were actually willing to help me. Ooh, excuse me. But it was something we were really wanting. We wanted a family young, and I knew something was wrong. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I didn't want to wait 5 more years before I got answers. And so I see people who get help right away, and it still takes them 2 years. And I want a family. I want more than one child, and I don't want to be waiting till I'm 30. So we seeked help again. Same doctor. I always liked him. He gave me answers about my PCOS when I had seen a doctor a couple months previous, and she saw nothing. She wouldn't help me. She wouldn't. She just wanted me on birth control. That was it. And I didn't want birth control. And so we loved this doctor, and so we went back to him. And he I just kept asking. I was like, can you please do another ultrasound? And finally he was like, well, we kind of are booked, but if you want to wait in the waiting room, we can see if we can squeeze you in. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't work today. I might as well. I want answers. So I sat in the waiting room. It wasn't long at all, maybe like 10 minutes. They called me back, and the girl did my ultrasound. She did a transvaginal. She did one on top, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna go grab the doctor. So I was kind of thinking, like, what is it? What is it? And she obviously wouldn't tell me because she didn't know. She gets the doctor, and he sees that I have a bicornuate uterus, or what he thought was a bicornuate uterus. So he asks, like, did you know you had this? And I'm like, no. I knew what it was because of people I watch here on YouTube, but I didn't know I had it. So I got sent for an HSG, and with that, they actually found that I did have a slight bicornuate uterus. It wasn't a septate uterus, which is great. My uterus is shaped like a heart, not like an oval. And so that was better than nothing, but it definitely doesn't help. And after that, he also realized that I had a blocked tube as well. So sorry about that. My fiance came in the room, and so I was talking to him. But so yeah, at that appointment, they also found out that my left tube is actually blocked. They weren't sure if it was like fully blocked or just partially blocked, and so he decided at that time that we aren't gonna do anything about it. But I did end up getting put on Clomid and metformin that cycle. So I started those 2 pills, and I was taking 50 milligrams of Clomid twice a day. So I was taking a total of 100, cycle days 3 through 7. And so we did that for a cycle, and I also on cycle day 11 went back into the doctor's, and he confirmed by ultrasound that I was not, my follicles were not maturing like they should. So he decided to give me a trigger shot, and what the trigger shot did was, or what it was supposed to do, was help mature my eggs so they would ovulate. At that appointment, I had an egg, I believe one was at an 18 and one was at a 15. I'm not 100% sure on the numbers. It may have been like 16 and 18. But he said he likes to see them at a 24 on that day in my cycle while on Clomid. And so he said that doing the trigger shot should help mature them a little more so that they do ovulate and hopefully to go. And so at that point, I was convinced. I was like, this is gonna work, because there were 2 eggs. I was convinced I was gonna get twins. And so my cycle came around, and I took a test, and it was actually positive. So I got really excited. I saw what was a faint line, and I thought it was it. I thought that was it. But a couple days later, I took another one, and it was negative. So it could have just been from the trigger shot, even though it was past the 2-week mark. He said to wait before testing, but it could have been that. It could have been a chemical. It's kind of, we're not really sure, but we're thinking it may have just been from the trigger shot or just an evap line. So with that, our next cycle, we got our dosage up to 150 of Clomid. So I was taking 50 milligrams 3 times a day. And that cycle, I had all sorts of symptoms from Clomid, whereas the first cycle I had none at all. So I had all sorts of symptoms. My hormones were all out of whack, and I just decided that, after this cycle, let's take a break. We were just stressed and all sorts of stuff. So we went through that cycle of Clomid, and it was unsuccessful again. I didn't take ovulation tests that cycle. but I'm like 90% sure I ovulated because of the ovulation cramps that I hadn't had in the past. And this light is blinding me. There we go. So yeah, it was unsuccessful. We didn't get monitored that cycle. My doctor said it would be fine. He figured since we have my dosage, it should work. So it didn't, and now we're kind of in between. We're kind of taking a break, but at the same time, we're obviously not preventing still. So I am taking this month off of fertility meds, and we're starting trying to lose some weight. I figured that might help a bit. I mean, I'm not super overweight. I weigh about 183, and I actually used to weigh 130 like 2 years ago. So I definitely have some weight that I want to lose, and I definitely think it'll help too since I do have PCOS. I think it'll definitely help with my fertility as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I appreciate everybody's support, and that is my infertility journey that I wanted to share with you guys for National Infertility Week, or National Infertility Month. Thank you, ladies.